Purposeful Action, the Youth Protagonism and Sustainable Development. I will welcome our dear moderator, Priya Sharma. Priya is an academic within the School of Business at Monash University in Malaysia, driving sustainability in higher education. She is also the Prime Chapter ASEAN Plus Chair, and her research interest is humanity and the law. Priya is presently pursuing her PhD entitled Trafficking of Migrants Workers for Forced Labor into Malaysia, an evaluation of the Malaysian legislative framework. Apart from the academia, Priya emphasized the importance of collaboration with multiple stakeholders to boost sustainability and bring education and life skills to vulnerable communities like refugee youth. Priya has also served as a keynote speaker at several international conferences like ours. In 2020, Priya was the recipient of the 2020 Monash Business Dean's Award for Prime Education Excellence. So we are definitely in amazing hands. Priya, thank you so much for stepping in and accepting our invitation to moderate this panel. The floor is yours.
Paulo, thank you for such a kind introduction. I didn't realize that I wrote all that to you, but thank you. So welcome everyone to the inaugural Prime Global Students Virtual Annual Summit. I'm thrilled to be part of this summit, and especially knowing that the theme is pass on the voice of youth, light the future of responsible management, I think, which is just such a lovely theme. So if you're here today in this Zoom room, you would know that the title of this session is Innovative Ideas and Purposeful Action, the Youth, Your Protagonism in Sustainable Development. Okay, so as you know, right, you would know by now that we do not have Planet B, and sustainable development is an intergenerational task. So you as the youth, you have become the protagonists of various global issues in today's world. From activism to entrepreneurship, your initiatives are influential drivers of change in business, government, societies, and communities. In the university ecosystem, and I'm sure most of you are students as well, you make a critical statement, and your voice is so crucial for the future we imagine. And after every purposeful and innovative action, your voice gets louder, and we increasingly move into the spotlight within and beyond our schools, right? So, and I understand that you cannot do all this work alone. We all cannot do this alone. We need to do this together. And I'm also sure that you know that you are not alone. So today, I'm really glad to have the following speakers on the panel. We have Lakshmi Hiranandani, who is the consultant of Unleash Plus. We have Natalie Chung, who is the co-founder of Wear Hong Kong. We have Qingzhu's son, who is the president of Green Origin Association at Zhejiang University. And last but not least, we have Sandeep Shrestha, who is the head of ESG and compliance at Dolma Impact Fund. So I am very happy to have all of you here today, and a very warm welcome to all of you. So let's begin. I do not want to waste time because we have such excellent speakers in the panel today. So let's start with Lakshmi Hiranandani. So Lakshmi, she is a programs and innovation manager at the Unleash Innovation Lab and Unleash Plus. She is a human-centered design enthusiast with a broad range of expertise across consulting, capacity building, and entrepreneurship prior to joining Unleash. She has worked with leaders of Fortune 500 companies, award-winning startups, nonprofits, and she is seeking to help them reach their potential to achieve sustainable impact. And through her various roles, Lakshmi has played a key role in aligning priorities between large development organizations that drive the SDG agenda and grassroots players who implement them. So welcome, Lakshmi, and thanks for joining us. And before you tell us a little bit about what you do, just bear in mind this question that I have for you, that through your Unleash programs that include Unleash Hacks, Unleash Unleash Lab and Unleash Plus, which are all programs for young entrepreneurs and change makers around the world. How do your programs operate and work to cultivate youth ability of taking action and shaping policy making towards enormous global change? Over to you, Lakshmi.
Thank you so much, Priya, and thank you so much to the PRME for hosting me and for all of us. I just want to add a small thing into my bio, which is I think one of my proudest achievements is that I was a participant in the lab that I'm helping to organize now. So a couple of years ago, I got an incredible opportunity to travel to Shenzhen in China for a social innovation lab conducted by Unleash, and that completely changed the way I look at sustainable development, at problem solving. And I'm so happy to be representing that institution as a part of the core team now. And thank you so much for this question and for highlighting the need for there to be more spaces for young people to talk about innovation, to talk about sustainable development. And in fact, Unleash was founded on exactly the same principles. It started as a crazy idea at the Carlsberg Foundation many years ago. And today it has blossomed into a reality, and we've been able to engage with more than 5,000 youth all over the world. And our crazy dream is that it should not matter where you come from, for you to actually participate in innovation and making small steps towards changing communities around you. If we think, what we like to believe is if we think that we're all just drops in the ocean and that we don't make a difference, then think about the impact of an ant, right? The ant is so small and yet it has so much power over so many creatures that are much larger than it. So to answer your question, Priya, like you said, we have a number of programs under the umbrella of Unleash, but I won't go into those details. I would love to put the website down here. We actually have our applications open until Sunday, and I'll talk through it through the panel. But essentially, whoever you are, if you're between the ages of 18 to 35, if you have an aspiration to make change, if you actually have an idea, if you have an enterprise already set up, we have programs for wherever you are in the world, whether or not you have the resources to travel, we have a program for you. So I'm going to stop my answer just there, but I'm going to ask all of you to go through our website in the chat to find out more details. Back to you, Priya. Sorry, Priya, I think you're on mute.
Yes, thank you, Lakshmi. And, just building on what you said about being an ant, I'm sure you've also heard of this quote. If you think you're too small to have an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito in your room, right? So thank you very much, Lakshmi. We'll come back to you and we will bring in the discussion more impactful in a moment. But let me then just go to Natalie now. Natalie Chung. Natalie is a climate advocate and a social entrepreneur born and raised in Hong Kong. And inspired by a polar explorer since young, Natalie devotes her life to climate action and environmental education. At the age of 18, she co-founded WARE, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, a social enterprise which promotes low carbon local tourism as means to mitigate climate change. And WARE has held over 100 tours and educational programs for schools and corporates to inculcate values of eco-centrism and nature appreciation among the public. As an impactful sustainability leader in Asia Pacific, she has been awarded the Tetler Gentilist Eco Business Youth A-list and was recognized by the Japan Times as a female climate activist driving change in Asia. So over to you, Natalie.
Right. Thank you so much, Priya, for your very kind introduction. I think I'd just like to echo what was shared by Lakshmi just now about don't worry about your impact for being too small, because we can always make a difference. And remembering my own journey of climate advocacy since primary school, I actually just did a small school project about climate change. And since then, I realized what kind of urgent crisis we're in as humanity. And I really wish to contribute to this cause by raising public awareness on climate change. Unleashes, we are at FAIR, where we organize eco tours and we train up eco tour guides because we believe in the model of train the trainer, and also for environmental education. Oftentimes people imagine Hong Kong as an urban jungle, but we do have very rich biodiversity that is yet to be explored. But people tend to travel overseas and enjoy like overseas tourism without recognizing the beauty in their surroundings. This is why we started our organization and our programs. We wish to rebuild that human nature connection, which is so innate in our nature, because when we look at trees, when we look at flowers, we become happier and we become less stressful. And we believe this kind of awareness on conservation and environmental consciousness genuinely comes from visiting nature and getting closer to these biodiversity hotspots and sanctuaries. So through the tours that we've organized for schools and corporates, we observe a clear behavior change before and after our tours, especially from the surveys and social impact assessments that we're conducting. And coming into the future, we hope to assist some sustainable rural tourism projects in Hong Kong and also in mainland China. Then we can start building the culture of nature appreciation from a young age, and to integrate that element of environmental education in our compulsory education syllabus, like what some of the other countries like Italy or Germany has already done for centuries. I believe there are lots of opportunities in Asia. Like most of us in this panel comes from Asia Pacific region. We're facing very rapid urbanization rate, and there's ever more important need to integrate climate change, climate adaptation, and resilience into our infrastructure planning. And hopefully by instilling this environmental mindset in our newer generation, our next generation of engineers, of architects can also get this important message of integrating climate change into our urban planning and to build resilient cities that are habitable for all. So thank you again for PRME for organizing this conference, and I look forward to learning from fellow speakers.
Thank you, Natalie. That's indeed very inspiring. And, you know, I have several questions, and basically I wanted to ask you, how has WARE made a change for your local community?
Yes, of course. Thanks for your question, Priya. As I mentioned just now, we have done a lot of youth empowerment program training up secondary and university students into becoming an eco tour guide and also like a mini social entrepreneur. So we give them a lot of ownership to create their own projects. It is a bit like Unleash, where they will work for us for a couple months and then initiate programs that can promote SDGs, sustainability education, and also physical workshops and tours for their peers. Through this, we have trained up over 60 youths in Hong Kong. And in terms of the local community impact, we're also starting projects to engage indigenous villages who own some part of the nature spaces in Hong Kong, and they do regular agriculture activities that have principles like regenerative agriculture and organic sustainable farming. And we wish that these sustainable farming practices can be more integrated into urban night's life. Because over 90% of the people in Hong Kong live in very highly urbanized and concrete-based environment. And they, if not for us to initiate these programs, they wouldn't think of going to a farm during the holidays. So we wish this can become a tradition or a custom where people will think of agriculture as a leisure, as a means of leisure or a tool of education for their kids or for their families during vacations. So we're hoping to empower indigenous villages at the same time when we organize such programs. And urbanites can also benefit by exploring and experiencing the nature and organic rural way of life.
Thank you, Natalie. I absolutely agree with you, and I think that the urban folk today need to know more and move into the rural areas and learn more about nature. And this is something I've learned during the pandemic as well. There's been a paradigm shift within a lot of us, and I think nature and preserving nature and doing good for nature is just coming to the forefront. So thank you, Natalie. Now, I would like to speak to Sun. Sun is currently, Qingzhu Sun, she is currently a sophomore majoring in animal science at Zhejiang University College of Animal Science in China. And she is currently the president of GOA, which stands for Green Origin Association of Zhejiang University in China. And GOA is a college student organization with the purpose of close to nature, practice environmental protection, and carries out environmental protection activities. So Qingzhu, thanks for joining us, and welcome to this this Prime Student Summit. And I have a question to you, and I would to tell us a little bit more about what your organization does and what kind of impactful activities has GOA organized, and what kind of power drives your group to insist to drive your initiatives and achieve such impressive initiatives. Over to you, Qingzhu.
Thank you, PRME, for your recognition. It's my honor to introduce several activities of Green Origin Association. Garbage classification project is one of our influential grants. We recycle 8,000 Tetra Pak bags every year on average, which have been running for 12 years since 2010. More than 1 ton of recyclable waste, which have saved 9 10-year-old trees. 1.5 tons of crude oil and 21 tons of aluminum has been recovered. Besides, we held more than 30 environmental education programs each year, benefits more than 300 children. In the past year, we held 28 environmental themed events with over 10,000 attendees. And for 22 years, we have been making progress on the road of environmental protection. Yeah.
Thank you, Sun. I do think that, as a student initiative, I think you aim to root your organization in environmental protection and in-depth sustainable education, which is inspiring. Thank you. I will come back to a discussion a little later. Now, let me introduce to you our next panelist, who is Sandeep Shrestha. Sandeep is a sustainability professional, educator and researcher. He is the head of ESG at Dolma Impact Fund and a visiting faculty at Kathmandu University School of Education, where he is a master's in philosophy in development studies scholar. He serves as a director at the Institute of Indigenous Affairs and Development. He brings over 10 years of international experience in private sector and development sector. Sandeep's core portfolios include renewable energy, healthcare, technology companies, and social enterprises. Sandeep, thanks for joining us today and giving us the time, your time of day, and looking at your experience and your profession as as the profession of the head of ESG. Tell us what is the kind of work that you do, and how do you think the role and potential of youth entrepreneurship is achieved in driving systemic change worldwide? What kind of experience do you have in driving this change and mentoring young entrepreneurs? Over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you. Namaste, everyone. It's really nice to be here. So in regards to my work as in ESG, what I basically do is manage various companies. So I basically look after ENS risk management. So in hydropower projects, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, hospitals, and tech. So what we are really seeing now is a lot of youth-driven companies. And one thing that we see is access to capital. So even if a company is youth-driven, they may not have the shareholding because of lack of capital. So that's a big difference that we see in terms of when we talk about indicators in terms of youth entrepreneurs. That's kind of a gap that we see, but what we kind of look at measuring is, was the organization led by a youth? So we started looking at youth in management, youth in shareholding, youth in senior management, youth in C-suite. So in our portfolio, we have around 85% that's youth. To entrepreneurship. So like a great example is we're all sitting here in this diverse group of people, like everyone's from different countries, different faculties, different companies, different backgrounds. We are students, teachers, researchers, corporate people from development agencies. And what we really see is that youths really want a purposeful education, and they really want to create an impact out of their education and in their career. So just listening to what Qingzhu was talking about, Natalie was talking about, Lakshmi was talking about, and the impact that they have had, like reaching out to thousands of youths, thousands of people from marginalized communities, that really shows the power of youth. So what I have gathered is that there are like 3 driving factors for entrepreneurship, especially for youth. And I'm talking more in context of Nepal. So first is entrepreneurship education. So unlike before where entrepreneurship was mostly focused on business schools, now various faculties have started a course on entrepreneurship, mostly social enterprise. So youth or students, they are like getting educated on entrepreneurship. And second, there are a lot of initiatives from corporations, from colleges, from and even from government. Accelerator programs, entrepreneurship development programs. So what that does is it's really driving youth toward entrepreneurship and helping them find solution to things that they see. So what kind of problems do they see? It's because of a diversity. So like just like in this platform, youths, they connect with people from various backgrounds, from various faculties. So we could have students. So I teach in this program called Masters in Sustainable Development. So we have students from maybe environment, maybe from sociology, social work, business, a whole lot of different dimensions. So and when we talk about sustainable development or sustainability, it itself is a very multi-dimensional topic. So when you actually have youth coming from different background and diverse background, what it does is it brings that ideas together and they work on finding a solution. So then that drives them towards entrepreneurship. Then third is global connection. So global connection, what it does is it helps people connect globally. So one key example is Prime Global Students, where we are connected from all over the world. And it's not only about learning, but it's also about sharing. So you learn about what people are doing abroad, and then you're also able to voice what you are facing and the solution that you have created. So what that does is it creates a platform for people, youths, to connect, learn, and share. So then that drives more entrepreneurship. But also, like, while all these things are good, there's also certain gaps that I have seen, and it's mostly to integrate sustainability. So there is this, when people do go to entrepreneurship, they are creating certain impact, but how do you integrate sustainability in that factor is very important. So helping kids or like students or like youths understand about environmental and social risk management, getting them access to corporations, giving them access to capital, giving them access to maybe development agencies, so they can really take their ideas forward, because they do have limitations. And then a key thing that I like to do personally in my teaching is also integrate sustainability in my curriculum. So help students understand what sustainability means, not just look at SDG, but looking at social risk, looking at environmental risk, and then various opportunities that you might create. So these are the things that I kind of like to focus on. And what this does is it has certain benefits. There's a benefit of cross learning, so you can learn from various people all around the world. You learn about environmental and social safeguards, so it's not only that you have something that's green, but then you're also on the side protecting the environment, and then also protecting your workers and communities. It creates a platform to grow, and then people can learn. And I think very important is it gives support and mentorship. So Priya asked a very interesting question about mentorship, like what I do. So few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I was introduced by my friend to an entrepreneurship program called Skill Lab. So I started mentoring a lady. She was in college, and help her transition from college to career. So that was the main goal of my mentorship. So once I started doing that, what I realized is that not everyone has access to mentors, and then I realized the importance that mentors can play to a youth's life or a college student's life. So what I started doing was rather than being a teacher or an educator, I started mentoring my students when I'm actually teaching. So what that means is being available to them even after they have completed my class, and throughout their career, they might want to go into a job, they might want to start a business, they might have questions. Just being available for them is very critical. So what that does is it helps me connect, it helps me share my ideas and knowledge, and also at the same time gets me to learn from them. So that's my experience in mentoring, and I think that's very critical component to get people or youth into entrepreneurship and help them grow. And all these various features would help in driving a systematic change in the world. Thank you.
Sandeep, thank you. I think you're in a very unique position. I think the fact that you are in the industry and you also teach, I think you have observed where the gap is, and I think you're doing an amazing work in trying to bridge that gap. And the mentorship and the skills that you're offering is something we are trying to do in universities as well. And like you said, students are more interested in a purposeful education these days, and we have to be in the forefront of education to allow that to happen. And I think the best way is through bridging that gap with industry. So thank you to all the panelists for giving us an idea about what you're doing. And I think nothing inspires your fellow youth or change makers more than seeing their own peers lead the way. So congrats and kudos to all that you're doing. So I have a question here, right? And I'm quite sure a lot of our audience here is they are also from universities, and they are still students in universities. So and we definitely agree that the youth of today are leaders of tomorrow. So as of now, students in schools and still strategies do you think we can implement to connect and empower these youth networks around the world? Like, you're doing a fantastic job. What collaborative strategies did you start with, or do you think would be beneficial for youth networks around the world? Let's start with Lakshmi. What do you think?
Thank you so much, Priya. So I want to talk about the first statement that you made, which is that are the leaders of tomorrow actually the leaders of today? I believe in their hearts and in their intent, they definitely are. Like you said, there's a lot of inspiration, there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of energy. But I would ask the question that are they actually given the platforms that they need to do a lot of the things that they believe in, to actually make a lot of change happen? And similar to Sandeep's point, that how are we giving people the resources and the practical know-how to actually make changes around themselves. So I think that it's an incredible testament, like you said, that so many young people, my peers on this panel, there are so many efforts towards giving young people platforms. But I think that one of the things which needs to be embedded into the design of any youth network, any platform, has to be the element of practicality, which is sort of teaching young people to make cases, to understand who are they interacting with as institutions. So for example, Sandeep told us about a lack of access to capital. So let's say that there are organizations in your region who would be willing to extend some funding to you, provided that you are eligible and provided that you can make a great business case. I think that from my end, that's where I've seen that there may not be enough opportunities, but for the opportunities that do exist, sometimes very sadly, we don't even get enough applications. So I'm not sure what the challenge is. Is it that sometimes we don't see ourselves in opportunities like that? We think that we are not good enough, or we think that we are not experienced enough as young people. We have imposter syndrome. But whatever reason it may be, it might also be that we just don't know how to convince. Saying that I want to change the world, as beautiful as that is, it is not enough for you to actually survive in the world and get the funding and get the partnerships and get change to actually happen. So what I would say is that how can we help the great ideas to become great implementation? And I wanted to share a couple of examples from all over the world where youth have actually been connected to the institutions and people in power. So, I mean, as ideal as we want to be, we all know that a lot of decisions made all over the world are made by people who have access to resources, who are wealthy, who have political power. And for example, in Ottawa, in Canada, the members of parliament have this initiative where they actually tie up with local universities there, like Carleton and the University of Ottawa, where they actually seek out briefs from the students themselves on important issues such as climate action. So, you know, students such as all of you, you have access to so much of information. You're so good at crystallizing exactly what change you want. And now you need to either make that change yourself, or you need to connect with people who have the power to do that. And you need to be able to convince them as well. So, I mean, this particular example in Ottawa, they do actually take forward whichever ideas are feasible presented by students, and they do take forward in lobbying. And another example, which some of you might be aware, is in a city called Porto Alegre in Brazil, where they have been practicing participatory democracy for decades, where a municipality's budget is actually decided by all of the citizens, and many of them are young people as well. And with that, I'll hand it to the next speaker.
Thank you, Lakshmi. And those are really inspiring examples. And, you know, I guess, you know, information is at the fingertips of the youth of today. And all it takes is to find out that information. And there are lots of collaborations in the world today. And I have a comment from Raj Shah, who says, wow, this is quite exciting and practical. And you know, it's inspiring how Lakshmi has put it. So let's go to Natalie. Natalie, what do you think? How can we, what collaboration strategies can we implement to connect and empower youth networks around the world? What is your experience?
Right. Thank you for the question. And I think Lakshmi has pretty much covered all that I wanted to cover. As she mentioned, I think it's very important to allow youth to gain access to the resources and capital that they're looking for. And in terms of empowering youth and making stronger these youth network, I think another essential point is to give them enough ownership and space to innovate. From my own experience of hiring interns and empowering these young talents in their sustainability or climate action journey, we often tend to give them a framework or a traditional way of how things should be done. But in fact, when we were able to give them more space, they could think of things that our generation or me and my peers cannot think of. So one year, we wanted our youth interns to conduct a photo competition so that people will understand how beautiful and how biodiverse is our environment. But they came to us saying that photo competition is already out of date. It's not cool enough, and the younger generation would not be interested. And in the end, they held a competition called the SWOT, Sustainable Tourism Competition. So oftentimes we use SWOT analysis in our business case studies, like the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And they wanted to teach this framework to even younger junior school students, so that they can apply this mindset to evaluate different sustainable tourism hotspots in Hong Kong. For example, a country park, a forest, and a nature sanctuary, so that people can understand what are the strengths and weaknesses offered by these diverse tourist spots, and see what kind of tourism benefits can bring to the local communities, or even threats. If that area is too ecologically sensitive, having too many people visit there would create additional pressure or even damage the local environment. So in the end, this competition attracted over 40 to 50 students participating, and even gained attention from school teachers, saying that it's a great way to engage the younger generation. So this is the point I'm trying to make, is where when we're trying to build youth network, sometimes we can offset the boundaries and allow youth to use their set up mechanisms to facilitate innovation, and while giving them enough support and the minimum level of intervention and guidance, so that they can unleash, using that word, unleash their creativity and innovation to build a better future for all of us.
Natalie, thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. I think that's a very important fact that you just mentioned, and together with information that's on your fingertips, I think creating the space for allowing the young people to innovate is extremely important, because the ideas that are coming out from the younger generation, we have a lot to learn from them. And I think instead of a top-down approach, I think we should have a more expansive space and create it for the youngsters to come up with the ideas of your own. And your example is really wonderful to hear. Let me go to Qingzhu, Qingzhu-san, and let me ask you this. Since you are still in Zhejiang University, how can students start getting involved while in their respective universities to prepare to lead in the real world and to connect with the real world? What is your experience in that?
Thank you for your question. In my opinion, there are three most important qualities for our young people to develop in college. And the first is responsibility. Different identities have different responsibilities. Only by accurately positioning our identities and recognizing our responsibilities can we become qualified leaders. And the second is vision. Thought is the forerunner of action. Choice is more important than hard work. And through continuous expand our horizons to make the right choice. For example, the leaders of our club have increasingly attached importance to the promotion and the influence of our club. This gives us a lot of opportunities to communicate and learn with people in higher level fields, and from the school step by step to grow to influence the country renowned the world. And the third is cooperation. On the one hand, we should learn from each other and constantly improve ourselves in interpersonal communication. On the other hand, we should learn to cooperate with the team and divide the labor according to our personal advantages, which can achieve the effort of 1 + 1 greater than 2. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Qingzhu. So I think, you know, collaborating with each other, hard work, and trying to get more information and learn more about the issues of the world while you are in university is extremely important, right? And has led you to this organization called Goa to do the things that you do, which I think is really admirable. And so Sandeep, I have a question for you now, and I think you're in the industry, and you know what the problems are. And let me ask you, like, how do you think the role and potential of youth entrepreneurship is in driving systemic change worldwide? Do you think entrepreneurship is the way to go? And I believe you are ahead of ESG in DOMA impact. And you know, what differences do you see, and how do you see this whole business ecosystem for the future? Where do you think we?
So I think not everyone would want to be an entrepreneur, right? So there are a few months with certain personality traits that would want to get into entrepreneurship. But then there are also change makers that would maybe take a different role. You know, so they could emerge as a consultant, they could emerge as an employee worker, a strategic planner, or even like work in government, work in aid agencies. And I think that's what makes it important. You know, like young students, once they have the knowledge and they know like how to make that drive change and what they want to achieve, when they are in the right places, I think that's when that systematic change happens. Because it's not only entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs have a certain roles. They might like create employment, they might address solutions, they might create product services, but then there also needs to be change makers in the government. There also needs to be change makers in academic institutions, you know. So I think it has to be very diverse and get the people there, you know, so really support them. Another thing that I see is giving exposure. You know, so how can students actually get exposure in the field that they want? So it's not just limited to our textbook and project work and assignments, but actually going there on the field, or we can call it working experiential learning, work integrated learning. So there are like various pedagogies that we can really integrate that. So really getting students to get there, be out there. And one thing that I think I've realized over time is reach out. You know, so a prime example that I had was over a year ago, I reached out to Prime global students, and I spoke with Paulo, who welcomed me to the program. And then we started discussing this, the first ideation phase for what the global students has to do. Then in that phase, Marco said, like, we really need to like start collaborating across countries, you know, so how can we learn from each other? And I think like for students to really start making changes, they need to be able to network and connect with people, and then also collaborate and maybe partner, you know. So a wonderful example would be, let's say, Natalie has her company Where. So how do you not only like limit that to Hong Kong, but how do you get that to maybe someone else from a different country with similar ideas can learn from her, or take that business model. So rather than starting from scratch, you know, like build on like something that's already there, and then everyone can benefit out of it. You know, so I think like when we start changing this way of learning, way of working, and way of collaborating, I think it's really going to make that change. And not just like really limit to entrepreneurship, but then also build that ecosystem. Thank you.
You know, Sandeep, I agree with you, and you know, I like you said, I think you know, there may be people interested in a startup. Being an entrepreneur, there may be people interested in social entrepreneurship. There may be people interested in being part of a corporation and trying to bring change towards sustainability in that area. There's just so many diversity, and there are people also interested in being academics in institutions, right? And you know, I like what you said about reaching out, about students reaching out and seeing how they can get involved. You know, I myself try to create a space for students and try to bring it into our curriculum, because I think one of the gaps that we need to think about is how we can purposefully bring this into education, because I think students are primarily focused on their exams in a lot of universities. So they don't really necessarily think about these opportunities until they leave, right? So you just brought it up, and I was just starting to think. I mean, I don't think I blame the students, because looking at the workload, looking at the assignments, looking at the exams, they're too preoccupied with what they need to finish and then think about what they want to do. But you have just given me an idea that, you know, this is where you integrate this whole thing into education and help bridge the gap with industry. And I believe someone on the chat just asked about how do we improve, teaching and education in a university around this discussion. I think there's a lot to take away. Even I can take away a lot from this as to how we can bring this into the classroom, right? Like someone here who's just said about Qingzhu, what you just said just now, and agrees with you that 1 + 1 may be 2, but if done very well, 1 + 1 can also be 11. You know, so it really depends on how you look at it, what your ideas are, and you know how far you're willing to take it, and being exposed to what is going on, the issues. I think that's extremely important as well. Thank you all for this wonderful discussion. Can I ask if there's anybody in this audience today who would like to ask? I've got some wonderful comments here about, thanks for sharing, Lakshmi. The ARCA program is really meaningful, and we've got, a few comments about how wonderful the programs that you're all doing. So are we out of time,
No,
Paulo?
we are right on. For questions. Love to ask one question,
Yes,
if you don't mind, because we all know, and we are all aware about the rights of young people and how young people what are the responsibilities for us as young people, not only today, but what the kind of ancestors we want to be in the future. So I leave to the debate. What is the kind of ancestor you want to be in the future?
So Paulo, is what you're trying to say, what would you like to leave behind?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, we will still become ancestors, won't we? So what kind of world do you want to leave behind? Let's start with Qingzhu. What do you think? What kind of world would you want to leave behind?
Maybe later. Yeah.
Okay. I'll give you some time. Let's go to Natalie first. Then we'll come to Lakshmi, Sandeep, and then we'll come to Qingzhu. All right.
What kind of earth do I want to leave behind? I think this is a very interesting question. I remember I was serving on an expert panel where a company is investigating what is the new nature, what is the next step for sustainability. And some of the important insights that come up is how human will be returning to the nature way of life, and how our life should be embracing more parts of nature. For instance, in our own building, we can have our edible landscape, an urban farm, so that we can supply our own food. And increasingly, we will be focusing a lot of local sustainable production, be it for tourism, be it for manufacturing. and even for farming, because if we're able to source more products locally, we can enhance our self-sufficiency, and also people will be able to witness the supply chain of our food systems and understand the impact of each of the steps on the environment, so that whenever we choose what to eat, we can choose something that is better for the planet with lower carbon footprint. So I think
I like that, Natalie.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, go on. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so I
think I wanted to. Yeah, I like that very much, because I feel that to evolve means to go back to nature. And I think a lot of things in the food we eat today are over-processed, and it's not even good for us. It's not good for the planet. And I think what looking to leave behind and a humanity who complements nature is something I would think about as well. Okay, let's go to Lakshmi. What do you think?
Thank you so much, Priya and Natalie. And I just want to build on what Natalie said. And I think that one person's idea of what world we need to leave behind may not be enough. But what we have is collectively, like we have all the right stakeholders here in this room, on this panel. Like we need more, in the world I want to leave behind, I need like millions of more Priyas and Sandeep who are like embedded in institutions and who are, leading from inside, who are practitioners in the industry. We need more social entrepreneurs, like millions more of Natalies, to actually go ahead and do that and create that space for so many more young people. And we of course need more student leaders like Sun to again lead the way from in. The headline is, I think, creating that tomorrow together. But I think just building on what the other panelists have already very rightly said, that sometimes this idea of the world and changing the world is very overwhelming. All of these opportunities and wonderful programs that we talk about, they can also be very overwhelming. And I think, like, as a young person myself who was trying to navigate, like, what do I want to do with my career, with my life? Like, I care about so many things. What do I do about that? How do I take the next step? So I think Sandeep talked about how mentors are so important to help you make the right decisions. But again, I'm cognizant of the fact that sometimes we don't find those people very easily. And it's a very human thing that, if we have too many options, that we cannot decide. It's called decision paralysis. But what I would like to invite each young person who's creating their own tomorrow, that give that power to yourself. Don't wait for someone to come to you and say, I will mentor you, or, hey, do you want to join my program? Because as you can see, there are already so many institutions, so many programs who are designed exactly for you. Every one of you listening, there are people who want to empower you, who want to take your ideas forward. But as much effort as institutions and programs like ours are doing to reach out to you, you also need to reach out. And if you are having trouble deciding, like, oh my God, this sounds good and this sounds good, and what if I can't afford it? And what if my English is not good enough, polished enough? What if I'm not experienced enough? I would say just keep all of that aside. I did talk about practicality, and that is very important. But your job is to decide what you want. And you don't have to do the same thing your whole life. You just have to decide, what do I want to do today? What do I want to try to do today, or for the next few months, or for the next year? Careers are not like how they were maybe 50 years ago. We have more options, and so many people shift from one thing to another, and that is a great thing. So that's what I would like in the world I leave behind, where people actually have the courage to try and to reach out.
Thank you, Lakshmi. That's lovely, and I liked your phrase, building tomorrow together. I think that's a tagline that should be used somewhere. And we have to do this together. And I think you're so right to talk about how things can get overwhelming if you want to save the world, and maybe what you need to do is just start small, start basic, start with you, and and just look at what you think is important and what you would want to change, and just go one step at a time, and it just leads to amazing things. Okay, Sandeep, let's hear from Sandeep. What would you like to leave behind?
Sure. So I think I'll take back to one of my favorite sociological theories, that's Ulrich Beck's risk society. So what that basically tells us is that we live in a society that's based on risk. And then risk, it does not know any boundaries. So it does not have any political boundary, it does not have any income level boundaries, it does not discriminate based on your age, gender, whether you're rich, whether you're poor. So one example is the climate change. So climate change affects everyone, whether you're in Nepal, whether you're in the United States, whether you're in Australia, it affects everyone, right? So that's a risk. It does not discriminate, like there's no boundary to that. So I think what I really want to leave behind is people to understand that what is risk. And then we live in, we eliminate risk. So we are not just protecting ourselves, we are protecting our future generations, we are protecting the biodiversity, we are protecting wildlife, everything. So I think that's something that I would want to leave behind, is a risk-free society. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. And you've brought everything into balance. And you're talking about managing risk, and this is where another part of the passion, the idea, the future comes in, and we need that balance. How do we manage risk? How do we measure risk? And how do we have a risk-free? How do we put this into motion? So thank you very much for that. So last but not least, we have less than 5 minutes left, and Qingzhu, you are the youngest of us here, and you will be the future. So what would you like left behind, or what would you want to leave behind?
Hello. Yeah, I'm very agree with the comments and the standard. We should realize the risk, and we should do something to inspire other people to protect the environment. As we all know, when we see cartons being recycled, other people starting to pay attention to environmental protection because of our awareness and education. We can even more aware of how meaningful what we are doing. Yeah, I think the others react to us can make us realize more about the meaningful what we are doing, and help us to become a more inspired leader. Yeah.
Thank you, San. Thank you very much for that. And and I think the role you're playing in the university is extremely important. So we've come to the end of our session, and thank you for a wonderful session. I believe you have another session now called the Young People and Sustainable Development Governance happening in Zoom Room B. So you may want to move to that session. But guys, thank you for a meaningful discussion. We should definitely have more of this for the youth of today. So thank you very much to the panelists. Over to you, Paulo.
Thank you so much. Let's go for room B.
Thank you
so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.